Hey guys, I'm back in Encinitas, California to drive the all-new, fully electric Toyota bZ4X. Let's check it out. Perfect day for filming. You can see the ocean in the background. bZ4X over there, bZ4X over there. There's a lot of, see the little, it's a bit bZ in here if you guys are catching my drift. This is a black XLE front wheel drive model. And this car is pretty cool looking. I haven't seen one in black before, but as you can see with the model back there and all the other models, no matter what color you get, you're going to have black fender arches. Now, maybe the camera can pick it up, but this is almost like a real dark charcoal gray speckle, and this is your glossy black. Now, the black color, ironically, is the only color on the bZ4X that doesn't charge you an additional premium. Every single other color is going to charge you more, and then probably the two-tone on the Limited is going to charge you a premium on top of that. So what we have on the front though are specific to this grade, the XLE, are the bi-LED headlights, and we also have 18-inch wheels. Now this specific model is going to give you the not only the cheapest price but also the most range. So it seems like the less money you spend on the bZ4X, the more miles you're going to get. This is going to get you 252 miles of range with these smaller 18-inch wheels and more cushy tires. Very RAV4 like from every single angle, but the wheelbase is actually much longer than the RAV4. The wheelbase here is actually identical to the LX600 from Lexus or the Land Cruiser 300's wheelbase at 112 inches. The vehicle is about 2 inches lower than the RAV4. It's a little bit longer as well, probably due to that longer wheelbase to fit that battery pack between the two wheels or the two axles. Now going around to the back, I am actually impressed with how it looks, especially in this black color. Just how smooth the underbody of the vehicle is to maximize the aerodynamic efficiency. bZ4X on the back. And let's go ahead and open up the trunk lid here. That hatch is not kick assisted. You'll have that in the Limited grade. Underneath, a level 1, nothing crazy, but it is included on every single bZ4X. I've heard of other manufacturers not giving you one. Cargo space back here seems really big, and it's actually less than what we have in the RAV4. I believe it's around 27 cubic feet of space in the XLE, but if you get the optional sound system on the higher grades, it takes away from the cargo space because you have a subwoofer in the back. That we at least have a tonneau cover. Seats fold down 60/40 as you would expect in just about any other SUV. There's no power lift gate here, unlike the Limited model, so you'll just have to close it the old school style. That's okay with me. Now on the back we have a couple spoilers. On the Limited gives you an optional spoiler back here, but I think this one looks pretty good. And we have additional one just sitting on the lift gate there. Now underneath the hood, this particular model, the front wheel drive, is 201 horsepower and just under 200 pound-feet of torque. And we don't have a shock here, so very Toyota cost-cutting of them just to put a traditional kickstand, but it works all right. But if you guys are hoping for a frunk or something like that, you're not going to have that on the bZ4X. On the front wheel drive model, what I learned today is that you have a Panasonic sourced 71 kilowatt hour battery. If you go to the all-wheel drive model, it's sourced from CATL, and it's slightly larger on the all-wheel drive model. The inside of the bZ4X is a completely unique experience if you're used to other Toyota vehicles. Starting with the door panel, we have soft touch here. We have a small window in the corner with a hard touch around that. A-pillar is hard touch until we get to the headliner. This middle portion is soft touch, but we have glossy black plastic. The design of it kind of reminds me of the rear taillights in this vehicle. Now moving on to the dash, we have a quilted material that's also soft touch, has a nice little gel-like push resistance to it. Behind the dash though, there's another level that kind of flows with the doors, and that's where the speakers are integrated. That's where the defrost is integrated. XLE grade gives you two-tone seats. Now they're two-tone with materials, not colors. So we have a black Softex material on the outsides, but where your butt and back and legs come into contact with the seat are actually cloth. Speaking of which, we do have heated seats here in this bZ4X XLE model. It's also nice that we have a panoramic sunroof standard on the bZ4X. What's strange is we have a bar in the middle of it. I don't know how much it helps with stability. It must do something in terms of stability because above it, I can put my hand and touch the sunroof. So the sunroof expands. It's not two pieces of glass. It's one big piece of glass, but it's cut in half by this additional brace here in the middle. Some parts of the world will be getting a steering yoke. I believe that's for China, but we have a traditional steering wheel here, which I prefer. Very basic Toyota logo in the middle. The quality and the feel of it is excellent. It actually sits lower than your average steering wheel. And the reason is because the MID acts as a go-between between what would be a heads-up display and an MID. Instead, the MID sits really close to the glass, and therefore you don't need an MID because it's pretty much in your driving view at all times. So it takes a little bit to get used to, but to be honest, I like it a lot. And this should be seen in many more electric cars, especially going forward, is just have that MID really high, close to the glass. And I do prefer the steering wheel actually being a little bit lower. I don't feel like I have to raise my arms as much. Am I lazy? Maybe, but it feels good. Standard on all grades is a 12-inch touchscreen. This is the new Toyota interface. I used it just a second ago to bring me back to where I'm filming this right now. It's definitely way better than their old system, and wireless CarPlay, wireless Android Auto is in here as well. And moving on to connectivity, we have 5 USB ports in here, 4 USB-Cs, 2 up front, 2 in the back. We also have an additional USB-A, and this interestingly designed little cover here that kind of tucks away, and you have the USB-A in here as well as a standard wireless charger. And just like the wireless charger in the Lexus NX that I reviewed last week, it starts charging initially on my phone, and then it gives me a blinking orange light. So yeah, wireless chargers, I'd rather just plug in USB-C, charges faster, my phone doesn't get as hot, and it's, yeah, better. Below the screen, we have our heating and cooling functions, and we have touch capacitive heated seat, which I'm not gonna test because I don't wanna mess up this really pretty glossy area, and that's something that's everywhere in the center areas. Fingerprint city for this glossy black plastic. But the touch capacitive controls are very responsive. We do have switches here for fan control, for temperature control, as well as the placement for the air. So I love to have that. And the power button is nestled inside of one of the vents in the center. And we go down from there, more black plastic, of course, but we have the drive control knob, which you push down. I'm gonna put it at the brake, push down, and then you twist to drive. Now this has a backup camera, doesn't have adjustable lines on it, unfortunately. If you want that, you have to get the 360 camera on the limited grade. Automatic parking brake, brake hold, as well as a regen brake setting that we'll test today. Eco mode, as well as a snow mode. You have more modes, of course, like X mode for mud, dirt, sand, that sort of thing on the limited grade. You also can turn off that traction control if you want to do front wheel drive burnouts. 2 cup holders nestled really deep in this console, and underneath the console we have a good amount of space here where you find your chargers, and a nice little mat, like a felt mat down here to keep things in place. Opening up the armrest is a little latch, and it's shallow, but this comes out and gives us even more additional space in here. So I'm going to go ahead and put that back because it looks like there might be a GPS tracking device in there that I don't want to misplace. Get into the back seat, the bZ4x. I have so much legroom. That's the first thing that jumps out at me. I probably have a foot between my knee and the back of the seat that's set up for me at 6'1". So very, very impressive. USB-Cs back here, like I mentioned earlier, a couple of vents as well. Lots of glossy black on the door panel here, but we have soft touch materials all the way around until you get to the more durable bottom part. Good view of the panoramic roof here, of course, and then I fold down this armrest and we have a phone holder and 2 more cup holders. On the back of the Softex seats, we have 2 mat pockets. Also, it's a bit strange back here because we have pretty much a flat floor, and it only comes up maybe an inch in the center, and we're off driving the first ever mass-produced electric vehicle for Toyota here in the States. This is the base model. This is an XLE front wheel drive, and it is very quiet in here. I'm not used to a Toyota being this quiet. Yes, I've driven many of their hybrids in electric mode and their plug-in hybrids, but this is an almost eerie experience. And that brake feel, I need more time with it, but that didn't, that caught me off guard. So there might be a, transition between the regen braking and the the physical friction brakes, but let's have some fun here. Electric vehicles have instant power and torque, and I'm going about 35 miles an hour. I'm just gonna punch it. Oh. And I better, yeah, there's a check your speed sign there. So the funny thing is on paper, this vehicle, you know, 200 horsepower roughly, and roughly about the same amount of pound-feet of torque. But when you mash the gas here, it feels more peppy than that. It feels like 300 horse, at least initially. And then after, you know, that initial torque surge, it does feel not that powerful. But for city driving, this thing is gonna be plenty quick to get you guys up to speed and just keeping up with traffic. And what's funny is that in a front wheel drive, guys, the bZ4X is roughly the same speed as the NX350 F Sport that I just tested from Lexus, and that has 275 horsepower and a 317 pound-feet of torque. And so this vehicle can match it in acceleration, at least up to 60 miles per hour, which is really phenomenal. And I'm gonna focus on the ride quality here, because this has the 18-inch wheels, so it means larger tires. And I just ran over a sewer hole cover, and it was actually really smooth. I do feel like you do get bounced around just a little bit, like it's a very soft suspension. But we'll test the turning capabilities. I think there's some nice turns on this route. We also have a regen braking button that gives you just one setting here. So if I press it, it does not give you one pedal driving. Toyota just said that it doesn't even bring you to a stop. The bZ4X is following me. He shouldn't be following me because I don't know where I'm going. But I'm just gonna hammer it real quick around the turn. And the response is, of course, immediate. It feels good, super smooth, no sound. Like typically when you smash the gas on a Toyota hybrid, you know, with the CVT transmission, it holds an RPM and it's real loud and buzzy. Here, there's nothing. It's just nonchalant acceleration, which is really satisfying. Now the steering wheel feels excellent in my hands, and this is an all new steering wheel for Toyota with definitely a different layout than I'm used to seeing, but I love the matte finish to it. It feels really premium in my hands. And I do have the regen brake on the on setting, and it does slow down the vehicle quite strong, like you would be stopping it yourself. Now Toyota said the vehicle actually doesn't come to a complete stop on its own, and so it's just kind of creeping along at 4 miles an hour, so it's just kind of funny. But if you time it right, you can, you know, get used to it and get close to a stop. Then you have to apply the brake yourself. But here we go, keeping up with traffic here. No shifting of a transmission, no sound of an engine. Very strange in a Toyota. You know, the suspension does feel kind of RAV4-y to me, but the driving position is seemingly lower than the RAV4. Visibility is excellent. And when I first got into the vehicle, the 7-inch MID behind the steering wheel was a bit weird. I didn't know if I should be looking underneath the steering wheel, but so it sits low so you can see over the top of it to look at the 7-inch MID, which I believe is probably the exact same 7-inch MID that's taken out of the Lexus NX, which is not a bad thing. The better thing about this is that there's no protective glossy material in front of it that catches reflection. So it's a nice matte readable screen behind the steering wheel. The 12-inch screen is nice and flat. I would actually prefer if it was angled more towards the driver. But it does look good in here. There's no doubt that the aesthetics of the interior, at least in my personal opinion, they look really clean. I do still have tactile switches here for fan control. We also have heated seats in this XLE gray, which is nice. This piece here has a unique design to it with like the grid layout, and underneath is a standard wireless charger. So that is standard in this vehicle. Also standard is a bunch of USB ports, but I showed you guys all that during the walk around. Now I'm following this truck here. I really don't know what I'm going, and the bZ4X behind me was thinking about following me, but he luckily went around. And this, since I don't want to get stuck in traffic, I'm just going to pull around, hit the gas. It is so impressive. Even in this this front wheel drive model with less power, less torque, the response is so good, and you're not having to wait for the transmission or the CVT or whatever Toyota vehicle you're driving. You don't have to wait for that power to kick in. It's just there. And to me, it makes the vehicle more enjoyable to drive in some ways because it does exactly what you want it to do when you want it to, no waiting around for the downshifts. And it also does it so quietly. So it's a very pleasant. Now, very steep hill here. I have the regen brake on, and it's a very impressive controlled descent, and it's actually slowing me down at this very sharp grade here. I actually have to get back on the gas a little bit to get to a stop right to the red light. I'm gonna get off the gas, and it should creep me along at 4 miles an hour, so like it did earlier. Yep, 4 miles an hour, and I'm hitting it. Green light, uphill, there's 60. So I'll time that what it was, and I was actually going uphill for the majority of that. That was impressive power delivery, and that's what electrification gives you. And the bZ4X might be the best Toyota out there right now, at least for the crossover segment. We have an extreme GR Corolla coming the day I'm recording this. It's getting revealed tonight, but that's from the best of the old internal combustion era, and this is kind of like the new chapter for Toyota with electrification. Yes, we still have plug-in hybrids coming and normal hybrids coming for the Toyota lineup, and even fuel cells, but after driving this fully electric bZ4X, if you can live with the sacrifices of the charging networks and infrastructure or lack thereof, if you can live with that, the bZ4X is probably the best Toyota vehicle on the market for the average consumer. No, it's not the most engaging car, but the technology is here, the driving response is here. And like I said, on paper, the 200 horsepower doesn't seem like much, but just gutting it out of the turn, and like that's more power than the vast majority of vehicles on the road. At least the sensation of it is very intoxicating and splendid. I'm very excited to drive the all-wheel drive model after this. Comfort in this XLE model with the cloth seats that have the Softex trim on it, it's pretty good here. I didn't really adjust it much. Now, I don't have power adjusting seats on the XLE, which is pretty crazy. So I've been driving this mostly in town, and it's rated at 252 miles in this front wheel drive XLE. I would say 5 to 10% of the charge bar is depleted, but it's telling me that I have
Lancaster Avenue.
It's telling me that I have 253 miles. So in town, you're probably going to be able to easily stretch out the range of this vehicle. Over 260 miles, no problem. But most of you guys are going to be plugging in at your house overnight. So, and even though the regen braking is pretty good in here, it kind of makes me car sick, and that's just me getting used to, I'm gonna go around the semi, that's just kind of me getting used to the differences in electric cars versus normal cars. When I prefer when I get off the gas or the accelerator that the car coasts. And what happens when you have the regen braking on is that it immediately starts decelerating pretty aggressively, and so it can kind of give you this nauseating effect that you expect the car to coast and it's actually pulling you back. So me personally, unless I was going down a mountain and then I wanted some additional regen, I'd probably leave off the regen braking. But just keep in mind that it does have combination regen braking. So just because you don't have this almost one pedal like button activated, you are still going to be regenerating the battery as you push the brake pedal. And me driving this vehicle comes at a great time because I just drove like the 310 horsepower, 442 pound-feet of torque Ioniq 5. And, that's, of course, an electric vehicle. It has so much power and torque, but the suspension and the chassis and the overall vehicle cannot balance it out. So it almost feels unsafe when you maximize the power delivery of that car. This car, I don't feel like, even though the power is great, it doesn't ever feel like it's overwhelming for the chassis or for the tires. It feels very well balanced, and I think Toyota, they just know what they're doing. They always provide very well-rounded products. They're not going to blow anyone's minds in terms of specs or performance, but in terms of everyday livability and longevity, as Toyota's really proud of their longevity and the research and development they have done for the battery packs on this vehicle, and we have a red light ahead, and just using this regen braking, and I can kind of modulate that regen braking with slightly putting my foot on the gas pedal to temper the really aggressive regen braking. In this vehicle, there's just one setting here with this button. I love this GX with the gold package. Look at those gold badges on that GX, looking sick. Now going about 60 miles an hour here, I do have wind noise coming from the A-pillar region where the mirror is, but it's very minimal, and it's much quieter than what the RAV4 is. And why do I mention the RAV4? Because it's, you know, the best-selling Toyota vehicle. Toyota also compares this vehicle in terms of size to the RAV4. Sitting here idling, I can hear kind of the high-pitched electric synthetic noise that Toyota put in this vehicle, but it's actually really, really minimal compared to their hybrids. So they've dialed back that loud synthetic EV spaceship noise in the bZ4X, which I'm really, really happy about, because in the Mirai that I drove, I could hear that synthetic noise up to like 35 miles an hour in it, and that's just unacceptable. And also, when you're in such a quiet vehicle like this, you can hear broken exhaust systems on Dodge Chargers so much better, but conversely, you can hear some nice exhaust systems on some BMWs, and there's a really nice IS up there as well. And we're going to throw this in the corner here because why not? Actually, what? That shouldn't have held as well as it did. Steering is really light, but electric power steering is kind of vague to begin with, but it was very accurate. And as I accelerated out of the turn, I heard the tires just a little bit, you know, digging into the pavement, losing a little bit of their traction. But, you know, with this 200 horsepower to the front wheels, I don't want to get behind this stinky truck here. And I just love how effortless even uphill acceleration is over the gas competitions. It just feels really good, and it's so responsive to what I want out of the vehicle. But going back to the handling of this, that really took me by surprise. You know, this heavy lithium-ion battery sitting right at the bottom of the floor. There's an ID4 right there. So I mean, California, we're gonna have some. Oh, he just smashed the gas in that bZ4X in front of me. Now the one in front of me is the limited version of this car, so it's front wheel drive as well, and the only way you can tell from the back is going to be the all-wheel drive badge back there, so that one does not have it. Now interestingly, the bZ4X's brake lights are on in front of me, so Toyota, I'm guessing Toyota has, as long as the regen braking is happening, the brake lights turn on. So we got a red light up here. I'm gonna hit the brakes pretty hard right about now. That was really impressive. Very smooth. So the very initial brake feeling that I got, oh, okay, I don't need you. The initial brake feeling that I got, it was a little bit touchy in first impressions, but that was super linear, very progressive, and I felt like I had a lot more brakes to give, even though I was stopping at a rate that almost made me want to throw up. Just gonna hammer it up the hill real quick. Gosh. That is really satisfying and fun to get into this accelerator pedal. But I'm gonna take this back to the beach, and I'm gonna start summarizing the bZ4X front wheel drive model. You don't need all-wheel drive. Now, I haven't driven the all-wheel drive model, but in terms of the power delivery and the responsiveness, even though it's just 200 horsepower and just 196 pound-feet of torque, don't look at the specs. Drive this vehicle. It's going to be more than adequate for the 99% of people out there. It also has a nice creep function too. As I get off the brake, nice creeps me forward, even though I'm in the regen braking setting. So the XLE bZ4X with the black paint color comes around $43,000. Toyota this year should be running out of its EV tax credit. Lawmakers might change how the EV tax credits work by the end of this year, so I wouldn't put too much into that right now, but it is competitively priced. All electric vehicles are pretty expensive, and Toyota has given us an excellent product. I can't think of anything that jumps out at me that I don't like. The quiet's there, responsiveness is there, the comfort's there, the technology's there. Maybe the looks may take some getting used to. Most electric cars out there have some weird looks to them, so this just kind of joins the quirky bunch. But I'm sure you guys have a lot more comments and questions down below that I'll try to address about the XLE front wheel drive bZ4X, the first ever mass-produced electric car for Toyota here in the United States. I'm not counting, you know, the old RAV4 EVs that were very low volume and only for California. This is the real deal here, guys. But make sure to check out my all-wheel drive impressions of the bZ4X. Can't wait to show you that as well. Catch you guys in the next video. Signing out from Encinitas, California, and the bZ4X. Check you later. Peace out.